If you want to drive more e-commerce revenue without increasing your ad spend, and you want the revenue today, not in a year, it's email and CRO. That's how you do it. Reconvert customers from long ago and turn existing site traffic into revenue. The cheapest customer is the customer you already have. So if you want help with this, come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form, and ask to speak to me directly.
In the inbox late night, glowing screens see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
How to attribute your post-click ecosystem, part 2. Let's talk about Rebuy, and then CRO, site iteration, improving your web page conversion rate. You are going to find when you do this, the MER on your CRO activities, your Rebuy, and your email are all like 1 or 2%. It's going to be the cheapest damned revenue. And you're going to go look at your ads and your eyes are going to be popping out of your head when you compare the spend efficiency, the MER for all of these. Hey, entrepreneurs, executives, spammers, and webmasters. We launched episode 1 of how to attribute your post-click ecosystem a week or so ago. I've got lots of content I'm trying to get out. I didn't want to take a full weekly slot, so we're going to just sneak episode 2 out midweek. These 2 episodes are strong for anybody who is currently in the thick of attributing their ecosystem, and they'd like another perspective. I've used this overlapping as opposed to shared attribution model myself for another perspective to confirm or challenge what I believe based on what I'm seeing in multi-touch attribution. It's just another tool in the toolkit. And lots of episodes that we push out on the podcast are like how-tos and tips and tricks from me and other people who've been doing e-com for decades. So enjoy part 2 and have fun spamming. Okay, let's continue. Let's talk about Rebuy. So Rebuy now fits in our CRO. It's on-site post-click, right? And we do a managed Rebuy solution. Rebuy is not a set it and forget it system. It's just not, because we look at Rebuy in the audits. And when I look at brands, that go through our audit process and they're like, some of these Rebuy widgets, hasn't been touched for 2 years. Those are underperforming. And like when you look at those accounts, you're like, yeah, these Rebuy numbers are lower than we expect to see. So you need to calculate your Rebuy uplift. Well, Rebuy just gives you a revenue, but it says there's no 7-day last click because it's on-site. This gets into the problems with MTAs. It's a tool on-site. It's not like an inbound channel, right? And advertising is thinking about kind of inbound channels. One thing you can do is you can just take the Rebuy revenue and you can divide it by Shopify and get a Rebuy Shopify revenue rate. You can just do that, okay? You can also calculate the uplift from Rebuy. I kind of like doing this. I'll just say we weren't measuring uplift with the other channels, with advertising, organic, and email. We were measuring absolute 7-day last click or absolute revenue. But the uplift, the thing about this Rebuy uplift technique I'm about to give you is it's like more accurate. Rebuy knows what portion of orders, it gives you the number. It's in their basic dashboard. It shows you what portion of orders have a Rebuy recommended product. And it also tells you right next to it, what is the AOV improvement of orders that have a Rebuy recommended product. And what you do is you just multiply the 2 together. And so very common to multiply those 2 together on a Rebuy account that's running really, really well and get something like 10%. Our average that we see there is like 8. Okay, when you see a 10% there, that means you've increased revenue for the domain by 10%. Is it possible to turn Rebuy on and just drive 10% more revenue? I mean, not turn it on. It's a managed solution. Just like you can't just like turn email on and make all that money. But can you add Rebuy to your system and increase your revenue by 10%? Yes. We saw clients do it this Q4. Rebuy's for certain brands. You need to have a large or dynamic catalog that has good upsell, cross-sell opportunities. Complete the look. People who bought this also bought this. You know what I mean? recommended for you based on your spending habits. Add one more and you unlock this bundle discount, that kind of stuff. You're, just getting your site automatically doing that. What is Rebuy? It's the online version of you walk into a store and a sales assistant comes up and goes, "Oh, I see you looking at these jackets. Here's a great shirt to go with that." Right? We're making that happen on the website. So, if you're the right kind of brand, totally possible for Rebuy to just increase your revenue by 10%. If you want to talk to us about that, come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form. I'll speak to you directly. So 2 different ways. One is just accept their platform revenue and just take it as is and divide it by Shopify and get a Rebuy Shopify revenue rate, the impact of Rebuy relative to Shopify, and then you have an impact. So now we've got ads, channels, organic, email, now Rebuy, and we see this Shopify revenue rate, this impact. It's like we can now look at this, and these are allowed to overlap. We can look at the totality of each one of these and size it. How big is it on email versus Meta? And of course, I said for simplicity, just put all your ads together, which is actually, it's going to be a huge impact. It's also going to have a crazy, huge MER. So it's just a different story. Or you can go the extra mile and do your Google ads separate from your Meta ads, separate from your TikTok ads. That's going to be more exact. Just takes a bit more work. You can have all those different revenue rates and all those different MERs, but you can now at least size them. You've got that revenue rate for each one. You've got the impact for each one. And then you would calculate the Rebuy MER the exact same, right? You would say kind of what you're spending on Rebuy, which is going to be pretty affordable compared to advertising. And you divide it by Rebuy revenue. Now, if you did the predicted uplift, you have to just realize when you're looking at that, the uplift method I told you, you have to realize, obviously, when you're looking at that, okay, this Shopify revenue rate no longer really is one-to-one with these other ones, which are all 7-day last click absolute. So this is going to be a much smaller number. Then you're going to look at it and go, okay, well, that's an uplift. And you just know that. And again, if you're doing this twice a year, not more than once a quarter, right? But if you're doing this like twice a year for your system, maybe at the end of H1, at the end of H2, then you'll be able to trend that impact, right? And see if that impact is increasing rather than the absolute. Hey, you know what? If you're on the brand side, you're doing this yourself, just do both. Why not just do both? Okay. And then CRO, last one here. So this would be site iteration, right? Improving your web page conversion rate. And this one is, so here's what's interesting. So I also am going to tell you, I'm not going to give you an absolute. What's the absolute? There's no way to do an absolute for this, like the 7-day last click. What's the 7-day last click website? You know what I mean? That's not a thing. So I'll tell you how to do the incremental uplift of these activities. And the interesting thing is, if you did the incremental uplift on Rebuy, which was a portion of orders that have Rebuy on them multiplied by AOV improvement of orders that have Rebuy on them, you get your uplift from Rebuy. If you do that, well, then you have something that compares very well. You can also look at your uplift from CRO, which I'm going to tell you how to calculate. It's got some math. And then those two are apples to apples. And so the thing about that Rebuy is, hey, you can do it so it's apples to apples with your advertising and your email, or you can do it so it's apples to apples with your CRO. Like I say, or you can do both if you're feeling saucy. So here's the way to do the CRO revenue. Okay. I'm just going to read you the math. All right. But keep in mind that I don't care how you calculate this. The point is you want to use your change in conversion rate to estimate the impact that you had on your domain revenue from that change in conversion rate. So first of all, we're going to use direct conversion, linear attribution in Shopify. Direct conversion rate, linear attribution. Go to marketing and click on attribution, right? Do the last, if you're doing H2, you do the last 6 months, right? So then you look at the direct channel conversion rate. Why? Direct channel pulls out everything that's a known channel, right? So it's going to pull out your Meta, it's going to pull out Klaviyo, it pulls out everything that's known and assumes that every single one of those people typed you into the browser. Now that's actually not true. There's when someone uses an app to reach you, there's all kinds of different situations where certain HTTP calls have the referrer stripped from the information. Like there's all kinds of cases where it wasn't actually direct load. They didn't actually type it into the browser, but it just shows up as direct. it just happens, right? A lot of traffic. I mean, I would say probably a minority of what's in direct is actually direct load. But we do know that we've stripped out Meta, we've stripped out Google, we've stripped out Klaviyo, we've stripped out all this stuff. And so if somebody is suddenly spending more on Meta, spending on really unqualified traffic, driving down the conversion rate, that should not show up in direct. So direct will be more stable. I noticed that direct has structurally a lower conversion rate than the headline conversion rate in Shopify. And select linear attribution, not last click. Why? Because the last click, it's going to has a super low conversion rate when you do the last click, which seems counterintuitive, but there are tons and tons and tons of garbage sessions that get dumped into direct. Just all the trash that hits here, just really garbage sessions end up getting stuffed into direct. And so that actually gives a super low conversion rate. When you choose even, and then that super trash traffic was actually part of a multi-touch purchasing journey from a client, and they did end up purchasing, and somehow you just got a trash session from them, it gets some credit from that ultimate purchase. So you get more of a normal conversion rate when you do direct linear. Okay, so you do direct linear conversion rate in Shopify. So, and we're going to do 2 periods, that conversion rate over H2, say 2025, and that same conversion rate over H2, 2024. Okay. Or whatever 2 periods you want to compare. So we're going to say revenue in period 2. And again, if we're doing a year over year, it's H2 2025 versus H2 2024. If you're doing period over period, it's H2 2025 versus H1 2025. You just decide what your anchor is for measuring your improvement. So we'll do revenue period 2 minus, here's just the math. Revenue period 2, it's the revenue from H2 2025, minus, kind of in big brackets, revenue from period 2 divided by direct conversion rate period 2 over direct conversion rate period 1. So direct conversion rate period 2 divided by direct conversion rate period 1 is the improvement from those, the conversion rate improvement, or worsening if it got worse. And then you can actually show the inverse and say, yeah, this is how much money we lost by having a bad conversion rate. But you've got your revenue in the big brackets, revenue in period 2 divided by direct conversion period 2 divided over direct conversion period 1. And you just kind of get, when you do this, when you math all of this, again, revenue period 2 minus big brackets, revenue period 2 divided by direct conversion period 2 over direct conversion period 1. When you get that, you get the, let's just say estimated or implied, you get the implied revenue boost that came from the improvement in conversion rate. And to kind of confirm this, if you were doing this on a spreadsheet, if you had conversion rate in period 2 was 1.25% and conversion rate in period 1 was 1%, and you had 10 million in revenue in period 2, you should come out with 2 million is the estimated uplift from your conversion rate improvement, right? Okay, so look, that's how you just get the implied revenue improvement from conversion rate, okay? Well, now divide that by Shopify. And what do you have? You have a CRO Shopify revenue rate, which is now a 1-to-1 comparison with the revenue rate you did for Rebuy, right? Now, and those two are improvements, but you then have them to size against your email Shopify revenue rate, your advertising Shopify revenue rate, your organic Shopify revenue rate, right? So now you've got this this interesting apples to apples number you can use, allowing for overlap that just shows the absolute impact of each of those relative to Shopify. And you know what? I mean, I don't do this, but it's just as I'm really sitting down and explaining this to you in this 1 hour episode, it's gonna be more than an hour. As I'm breaking this down and explaining to you, I don't do this, but I guess you could actually just derive your incremental for email and advertising and organic in the same way that you derive your period over period from Rebuy and CRO, or your period over period from CRO and your incremental from Rebuy. If you did the actual period improvement for email ads, organic, then the whole thing would be totally one-to-one with that revenue rate. I don't do that, but man, if you're feeling saucy, you could, right? You could. And then finally on CRO, look, you take that implied improvement, divide it by your CRO cost, which, I mean, maybe you're paying for Shoplift or something like that. Again, you don't put salary expense in here, but any tools that you're using in CRO, you put in there and you get the MER. And you are going to find when you do this that the MER on your CRO activities, your rebuy, and your email are all like 1 or 2%. It's going to be the cheapest damned revenue. And you're going to go look at your ads and your eyes are going to be popping out of your head when you compare the spend efficiency, the MER for all of these. And then you just look at the revenue rate, the kind of the platform revenue rate, the Klaviyo Shopify revenue rate, the Rebuy Shopify revenue rate, the CRO Shopify revenue rate to size these things. And then, I mean, what do you want to do? You want to make them bigger over time, right? So you run this twice a year and you compare what it was in H1, then in H2. Hey, entrepreneurs, executives, spammers, and webmasters. I forgot to discuss the 2 customer retention metrics, which are critical, obviously, on the world's best email retention podcast. 2 metrics are repeat buyers year over year and repeat of incremental year over year. Repeat buyers year over year, not repeat rate, right? Repeat rate is a zero sum. If you kill it on ads, your repeat rate goes down. So if you kill it on ads, that doesn't mean that you're doing bad on customer retention. I mean, if you're in a situation where your, repeat business is up 10% and your ads is up 80%, your repeat rate's definitely going down. But your repeat business is still up 10%, right? So you want repeat buyers year over year. And where are you getting that? You can just go right into Shopify and go to your repeat rate. And then, click on it and then go and download a CSV and it's going to give you your repeat buyers. And you can just look at repeat buyers. Do the monthly. So this is what I told you I run this once a year for H2. So that would be 6 months. So you pull 2 years of data and look at the most recent 6 months and then look at the same 6 months a year ago if you're doing year over year. If you're doing period over period for whatever reason, then you do the 6 months for H1 and the 6 months for H2. But you show, okay, are those repeat buyers going up? Not as the repeat rate going up. So that is a critical metric to figure out what's going on with your digital ecosystem. Now, what about knowing if first-time buyers are going up? Well, first of all, I'm trying to keep this simple. So I gave you 14 metrics. I don't want to obviously you can do this with 20 metrics, but also you've got Shopify revenue. So if your Shopify revenue is going up, then it's very rare that your Shopify revenue is going up and your first time buyers aren't going up. Because for most brands, repeat buyers are 20, 30% of buyers, right? So since it's usually less than, in fact, if your repeat buyers are more than half, unless you're like a product subscribe business, if you're a subscribe and save business, yeah, and you're established, repeat buyers could be more than half. But if you're not a subscribe and save and your repeat buyers are more than half, you're probably not advertising enough, right? So yeah, first you look at if your repeat buyers year over year are up or down. And then this repeat share of incremental. So when you went and went to Shopify, analytics, repeat rate, downloaded CSV, it gives you your repeat buyers, your total buyers, and you subtract repeat buyers from total buyers, you get your first time buyers, right? And then you look at 6 months of repeat buyers this year versus the same 6 months of repeat last year. You look at 6 months of first-time buyers this year versus 6 months of first-time buyers last year, same period. And you subtract last year from this year for both of them. You get the incremental first-time buyers and the incremental repeat buyers. You add those up, and that's your incremental buyers. You divide the incremental repeat buyers from the incremental buyers, and you have what share of your incremental buyers year over year are repeat buyers. And while it's rare for more than half of buyers to be repeat. It is not so rare for more than half of incremental buyers to be repeat. If your new buyers are slowing down for macroeconomic reasons and you invest a whole lot in retention and you hire a crack team like the Pilot House World email and retention team, or you've got a great in-house team or whatever, then you could have more than half of the incremental buyers be repeat, because just as your first-time buyers are decelerating and you've got less incremental first-time buyers, your incremental repeat buyers are just firing on all cylinders, right? So that share of incremental buyers that are repeat buyers is a critical metric, right? To show how much of your business is coming from repeat, how much of your new business, how much of your growth is coming from repeat. Bottom line, if you are in a situation where that's more than half, it's like you should not make the decision to not advertise. You have to advertise to grow your business. But that gives you an indication of how much your retention system is killing it. And it may cause you to, along with reading your MTA software and all that good stuff, change the way you're allocating your ad spend. Totally could, right? Now, those are the two retention metrics in here: repeat buyers year over year and repeat share of incremental year over year. Those are customer retention metrics. Those are not customer base. If you go back and look at the previous episodes of the World's Best Email Retention podcast, probably in the episode 30 range, you know what I mean? There's a couple dynamite episodes on customer base that I do suggest you go back and watch. But ultimately speaking, large brands care about their base. Now, think about customer base as your balance sheet, and think about customer retention metrics as an income statement. So what do I mean there? Well, the repeat stuff is a flow. Let's say you're doing this analysis quarterly. I mean, repeat buyers year over year and repeat share of incremental, you could totally run that quarterly. Absolutely. Now, if somebody repeats in all 4 of those quarters, they show up 4 times, but it's actually only 1 buyer. So in your customer base metrics, that person will only appear once. And so does that make the customer base metrics worse or better? No, they're just 2 different ways of looking at things. One is all your customers and what kind of customers you have, and generally speaking, when a larger share of your base is repeat, it's good, right? And you could have a situation where your repeat buyers year over year, if you're doing doing this quarterly, are up, and your repeat buyer, your active repeat buyer as a share of customer base is down. That could happen. If your business is moving towards whales and you've got a smaller number of people doing a whole bunch of business, maybe because you're pivoting your business, that could happen. Is that good or bad? Well, it just depends on the situation. But seeing those 2 things against each other would be an important analytical customer retention exercise, right? And again, customer base, if you go back and look at those episodes, customer base is, so you've got your customer base, which is all customers. You've got your active base, which is all customers who've ordered in the last 12 months. And within that, you've got active first time. They've ordered in the last 12 months and it was their only order ever. And active repeat. They've ordered in the last 12 months and they've ordered 2 or more times ever, whether it was last year or 5 years ago, right? That's your customer base. You look at, companies like Procter & Gamble and stuff like this. They care very much about their customer base because that's where their money comes from. Your money comes from your customers, right? And look, hey, where does that show up in MTA? Most MTAs, I can't think of a time I've sat in front of an MTA and it had customer base or any of these customer retention metrics, right? It's just like one shot, one kill. Was there a click? Was there an order? So if you are basing your business off of MTA software, you are not optimizing for customer retention and customer base, and you're not even looking at it. And I just told you that the biggest companies in the world, that's what they care about. They're like, how can we grow our customer base? Not how can we grow our purchases? I mean, of course they want to grow their revenue, but they want to grow their customer base because customer base offers more chance to drive repeat purchases, and repeat purchases have a lower cost than first-time purchases. it is cheaper to activate someone on their second purchase than their first purchase. It's cheaper to activate someone on their third purchase than their second purchase. That's just the way it works, right? So you need these 2 retention metrics. And also, I mean, I didn't put customer base on here. I wanted to keep this simple, but yeah, you got to look at your customer base too. These metrics are critical for knowing that you are growing your business in the right direction. And so what are the 2 important customer portions of this whole thing that we discussed? Well, these 2 retention metrics. Are we growing our repeat buyers year over year? And how is repeat as a share of our growth? And then what share of Klaviyo revenue is repeat revenue? And if you go back to the recent episode I did where I broke down Shopify 4 purchaser quadrants and Klaviyo 4 purchaser quadrants, that obviously ties into all this and understanding what portion of Klaviyo is this repeat business, because that is the don't chase the same dollar portion of your business. That is the part of Klaviyo that is, I mean, I'm not saying Klaviyo revenue from prospects is not useful. Of course it's useful to send someone an abandoned browse and get them back on the site and get them and have a second bat at their first purchase. I'm not saying of course that's critical, but one, everybody's doing that, right? It's not super special. What's super special is focusing on the stuff that is not already actively shopping, getting people who are not already actively shopping and getting them actively shopping. That is a portion of your email and SMS program that is truly additive. That is where email and SMS and advertising together are greater than the sum of their parts. And you will not see that in your MTA. It won't tell you when that's happening. That's not what it does. It's there to optimize ad spend, right? You need these metrics that we're discussing right here. And if you don't get these right, this is a strong statement, but look, it's a strong statement, but I've been doing this for a long time. I've been in customer retention for a long time. I've seen it all. And if you don't get these things right, your business won't grow, period. And if you are listening to this and you're like, we're not really growing like we were when interest rates were 0.25%. There are no tariffs. You know what I mean? Like, we're not really growing like we used to. Well, because then you could websites, people were locked at home shopping for years. For 2 or 3 years, people were just like kind of stuck at home. Even when the pandemic was over, people were still like, governments were governmenting, right? And so, yeah, people were just shopping online. You could go advertise, toss some traffic on a website, no problem, right? And then there was ad cost, but your rate at the bank might have been like, 2-3% or whatever. Now it's like 5 or 6. I don't know. So yeah, suddenly we're not growing like we used to, right? Yeah, because your whole business could be unbalanced. And I am seeing this. I'm seeing this because I got so many businesses that come in, right? And, and we're pretty good at spotting when this is a problem in a business. We're like, okay, the owners, or the kind of executives of the business are like, hey, we're not growing like we used to, right? And they bring in some new blood who are the next generation of internet professionals, and they understand all of the new channels, right? Awesome. Great. They bring in new skills. I don't want to seem like I'm bad-mouthing advertisers at all. Advertising is critical for changing consumer behavior enough to make your product a household name. You can't do it without advertising. Again, you can if you're purely organic, but generally speaking, you need to advertise. That's how everybody does it. It's how Coca-Cola does it. That's how everybody does it. So I don't want to badmouth advertisers. That's not what I'm doing at all. It's critical. But you have to get this stuff right, or you're just not going to grow. So the companies will bring in this fresh blood. And this fresh blood, they just went through they just learned to advertise in this. I kind of joke sometimes internally, like every interest rate cycle, a new cohort of 25-year-old advertisers have to learn how to spend efficiently, right? That's just the way it is. And it's my 3rd interest rate cycle. So that fresh blood comes in, they bring in new ideas, they understand the owners, the executives, they bring that in, but None of them know how email works. None of them know how email works. And I went through earlier in this talk about how we saw live their email got broken and their repeat buyers went down by half. So I'm seeing that. And then it comes to us and it's like, hey, this email is broken, right? And of course, look, CRO too. I'm seeing lots of people that come in, like I say, super low conversion rate, way below our benchmarks. I shared our benchmarks with you in recent episodes. And if you don't get this right, you're not going to grow. You're just not. I've seen it all. Okay, entrepreneurs and executives, spammers and webmasters. Hopefully our team just inserts this somewhere perfectly and then we continue with the rest of the podcast. That's this whole thing. It was an hour talk and I still have to do the denouement to wrap it all up. So that's our 14 metrics. And yes, again, you are going to find that when you look at the metrics in email, Rebuy, CRO, and then don't forget in email, what portion of email is repeat buyer, which is tons. Go back to that earlier episode I just ran, or maybe it'll run next episode, where I talk about the 4 quadrants of, stale, recent and stale, prospect and buyer, those 4 quadrants, where your buyers are coming from and where Klaviyo revenue is coming from, to understand how much email drives non-advertising revenue. When you look at this, it's going to be obvious. First of all, it's going to be obvious that if you are, to go back to the beginning of this episode, if you are thinking to yourself, holy Hannah, this is costing me a fortune. Oh, this advertising is killing me. Again, I'm not saying advertising is bad. Advertising is truthfully the only way I know to change consumer behavior enough to make a new product or service a household name. I don't know any other way to do it than advertising. I know some people do it purely through organic we actually have a client who they've gotten big with just organic videos on YouTube. They're just YouTubers, right? So of course, you don't need advertising to get big. You can do the whole thing organic. I don't know how. Like I have no experience with that. This podcast is kind of like my first little dabble at being a YouTuber. And it's like, I have a niche audience, although a niche audience of, people just hardcore, right? The audience here are people who just really, really, really are super niche and want email retention to work really well. Anyway, I don't know any way to make that new product a household name other than advertising. Advertising is critical. I'm not saying advertising is bad. I'm just saying, it's obvious after running this that if you don't have email, SMS, and CRO working, let's say you've got your email impact, right? Or your Rebuy impact. And those things are, let's say it's MER 2% for each one. And you're like, oh, okay, well, let's say I lose half that impact and I have to replace that same impact with advertising. Okay, well, that means I have to scale up something that has, my domains, let's say my domains ads MER is 20%. I've got to replace that 2% with something that costs 20%. So how much more do I need to spend, right? I need to spend 10 times more. So if you're already if your margins are already not fat, and lots of people these days, their margins aren't fat, right? If your margins already aren't fat, you just don't have the money. There's not enough. There's not enough to spend to get back to where you were. And so what does that equate to? That equates to a shrinking business. That is the profile of a dying business. An e-commerce business that does not have email and CRO dialed is a dying business. Yeah, organic fits in here. It's very important in here. When we go back to episode 40, the persistent revenue ecosystem, and all this fits into that persistent revenue ecosystem framework that we launched in episode 40, that organic is being driven by advertising and by email. So it's very possible for, if your business is dialed, for a quarter or a third of your overall impressions to be unique email opens. So in that case, email is totally driving organic, or driving branded organic, right? And advertising should be driving branded organic. Non-brand organic can be driven by other people advertising, and you can scoop up. You want to be doing. Definitely want to be doing Google, right? You want to be doing Google because you want to be picking up on those long tail keyword searches that are being driven by other advertisers. Yeah, but again, this podcast, we're talking about email, SMS, and CRO. So you need to have those dialed. Whew. Okay, everybody, be sure to check out the other episodes as we further flesh out the persistent revenue ecosystem, and you start getting really, really, really focused on pumping your low-cost revenue to make your e-commerce business not just keeping up with the Joneses, but far surpassing the Joneses, right? Flying over the Joneses in a flying car. That's what you want to be doing with low-cost revenue. Follow the World's Best Email Retention Podcast. Please leave us a nice review. Please share us with your friends who are also in e-commerce space. This is a repository of my life's work, so I hope you enjoy it. And until next time, entrepreneurs, executives, spammers, and webmasters, have fun spamming.
In the inbox late night, glowing screens see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Hey entrepreneurs and spammers, remember, you can't scale without email, and the cheapest customer to acquire is the customer you already have. So please subscribe to the World's Best Email and Retention Podcast and learn how to make low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem.